Hello and welcome to our English news edition. Here are our headlines for tonight. A dialogue took place between the authorities of both countries, Djibouti and Ethiopia, on the security situation in Djibouti and Diridawa. In Arta launch of the 2050th edition of the summer tournament. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, presided this morning in his cabinet a meeting of consultation with the Ethiopian authorities to make an update on the security situation in Djibouti and Diridawa, which is under control. The meeting was attended by officials from two Ethiopian countries, the Minister Delegate for Economic Affairs and the Ethiopian Diaspora, Mr. Akililu Haile Mikael, and the Ethiopian Ambassador to Djibouti, Mr. Shami Pradibu, attended the meeting. The Minister of Interior, Mr. Hassan Omar, the Director General of the Police, Colonel Abdullah Abdi, were present at the meeting. This meeting comes after the recent violence to Diridawa, who made 6 victims. Authorities of two parties have agreed that the security situation is under control. Both sides said that there were no Ethiopian deaths and wounded in Djibouti, contrary to the false information spread here and there. And during the meetings, it was specified that the authorities of two countries took preventive measures to reassure the population in the most secure areas. In addition, the voluntary repatriation of Ethiopians to Djibouti will be organized by the Ambassador of Ethiopia to Djibouti in collaboration with the Ethiopian authorities. And after the meeting, Foreign Minister Mahmoud Ali Yusuf with the Minister of the Interior Hassan Omar made a statement to the press on which he returned on the details of the meeting with the Ethiopian authorities. The important message, he said, is that the situation is under control and we must not pay attention to false information in social media whose sole purpose is to undermine the peaceful coexistence between the two communities of Djibouti and Ethiopia, who have always lived in harmony and peace in every country. During the meeting, the false information on the death and wounds of the Ethiopians in the Republic of Djibouti was categorically dismounted. More than 2,000 of them went to the police academy Dirisfa, so these Ethiopian nationals voluntarily requested to be repatriated to Ethiopia. So this morning, many were those who reacted to our microphone, expressing their satisfaction with the organization of this voluntary repatriation operation. Ethiopian nationals have insisted that there are no constraints on their departure and that since the events of the Diridawa, they have not suffered any acts of reproach. Those who have decided to stay in Djibouti said they decide not to be worried about their safety and trust the Djiboutian authorities and continue to work. Some 20,500 books were graciously donated this Sunday by Allo Aska to Djiboutian associations with libraries and reading room. This initiative is part of the promotion of the book and the awakening of the mind through reading. The love of reading helps to succeed in school and prevent school dropouts, and through reading have managed to accumulate knowledge and to flourish intellectually. The sooner children are put in contact with the books, the faster they demonstrate their ability to understand the world around them and to understand problems of all kinds. In our world dominated by television, technological innovations, and the use of smartphones and tablets via the internet, it has become essential to return to the concepts that allow real development of the mind and mastery of the written word. The sooner a child is put into contact with the book, the better will be its relation to reading throughout his life. The ceremony was attended by the Minister of Communication for Postal and Telecommunications, Mr. Abdul Yusuf Suge, and the Minister of Energy for Natural Resources, Yunus Ali Geti, and the Minister Delegate to the Minister of the Interior in charge of decentralization, Hamidou Mohamed Aramis. The ceremony was chaired by Al-Waska Vice President, Mr. Hamza Ahmed Almi, with as guest of honor, Mrs. Hiba Mumin of the Book Caravan. A study on the situation of children living on the streets of the capital was presented this morning, led by the Ministry of Women and the Family in collaboration with DSET. The Statistic Directorate had a study provided a general picture of the living conditions of street children, many of whom they come from neighboring countries, but are also from working class neighborhoods. The state of poverty leading parents to abandon their own children. Recommendations have been made to tackle this problem head-on. Existing structures such as orphan care centers, abandoned children, and residential and learning centers for children from disadvantaged backgrounds appear to be inadequate. Adequate measures for the protection of children and the improvement of their living conditions have been advocated. The study was funded by the European Union, chaired by the Minister of Women and Family, Mumina Ahmed Hassan. The meeting to present this study was attended by the Commissioner for Planning, responsible for statistics, Mr. Amr Saeed, the Director of Statistics and Demographic Studies, Mr. Idris Ali Sultani, and IOM representative Ms. Deqa Daoud, representatives of institutions working in the field of precarious child care, including SOS Village, also took part in the meeting. IOM's acting representative in her statement stressed the purpose of this study, which is based on having, she said, an overview of stray children in the capital to have an appropriate response. As for the Commissioner of Planning in charge of statistics, Mr. Amr Ali Hassan, for his part, considered useful the report on the conditions of survival of children on the streets of the capital. He mentioned the important recommendations made to put in place appropriate actions. And the Minister of Women and the Family, in a brief intervention, Mrs. Mumina, and she emphasized the importance of this study. She recognized the problem with the constant influx of migrants and spoke of the need to plan actions in the short and medium term to protect these children. The Secretary of State for Youth and Sports, Hassan Mohammed Kami, received this morning in his office the delegation of young sportsmen and women who had traveled to Japan in anticipation of the next Olympic Games. Led by Minister Abdul Qadir and Burhan Kinano, this delegation consisted of 9 young people, 5 girls and 4 boys. They had traveled to Japan as part of the preparations for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games at the invitation of the city of Minamisoma Fukushima region. These young people were chosen among the best students of public institutions in the capital and region. During this meeting, the young people in turn expressed their thanks to the Minister and the President of the National Olympic Committee. They confided their feelings on the results of this visit. Indeed, the young people were marked by the discipline as well as the Japanese way of life, having approached the city of Fukushima, which had been hit by tsunami and accidents on nuclear reactors. They also promised to invest more in protecting the environment. Bringing young people together for their development was the motto yesterday afternoon when the 25th edition of the RTD Summer Football Tournament was launched. This year, this summer tournament was named Muhammad Ahmed Wais Tournament in tribute to the Lieutenant Colonel of the National Police who died 5 months ago. The Lieutenant Colonel was one of the founders of this football tournament, initiated in the 80s. This tournament had a difficult time in the 90s and saw its rebirth thanks to the support of the head of state, Ismail Margile. This year, this tournament will bring together some 8 teams, including 1 from each commune of the capital and 5 teams from the region of Arta. The launching ceremony of this tournament saw the participation of the members of the government, including the Minister of Communication in charge of Postal and Telecommunications, Abdi Yusuf Suge, and the Energy Minister in charge of Natural Resources, Yunis Ali Gedi, the acting prefect of Mr. Muhammad Fawzi Ahmed Sowe region, and native parliamentarians from the region, Director of Sports and the State Secretary for Youth and Sports, Mr. Abshir Ali, regional authorities and Youth and Sports Department officials, as well as many supporters and young people from the region took part in this football matches. The opening match between Wa'ad's team and Kartile Pula's team resulted in 1 goal score everywhere. The tournament will end on September the 4th. A fire broke out early in the afternoon in the southern industrial zone behind the EDD power plant. The fire destroyed a warehouse belonging to a merchant. Smoke escaping from the as well as was visible from afar from flammable products, including a stock of lighters and gas. We do not deplore victims, but material damage is important. The elements of the civil protection arrived quickly to extinguish the firefighters are as well on the roof of the deposit and to extinguish the fire with jets of water. The director of the Civil Protection, Colonel Mahmoud Musa, and his deputy, Colonel Abdul Qadir, and the director of public security supervises the intervention of the firefighters. The security forces of the police and gendarmerie have secured the sector to facilitate the intervention of firefighters. The origin of the fire remains to be determined. The survey has been opened. Spirit is still in the summer period, and in the heat of the day, preventive measures are required both in commercial zones and neighborhoods to avoid the risk of fire. In this obituary, we regret to announce the death of Mrs. Khadija Muhammad Ibrahim Sultan, born January 27, 1956 in Djibouti. The late Khadija Muhammad Ibrahim Sultan was the daughter of the late Finance Minister Muhammad Ibrahim Sultan, and she was as generous, willing, and devoted as she was throughout her life. She died in Egypt yesterday, and the coffin will be buried tomorrow. Deceased was the cousin of the Sultan of Tujora. She left behind 3 boys and 2 girls. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. May God welcome her to his eternal paradise. And moving on now to the international news. In Mali, Malians elected their president. More with Mohammed Aden.
8 million voters began to vote in Mali on Sunday to re-elect Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta or Soumaïla Cissé, a poor place under high security on which hovers suspicions of fraud. Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, a historian by training, 73 years old, is seeking a second 5-year term. He won 41% of the vote in the first round against 17% for Soumaïla Cissé, a 68-year-old engineer. 18 opposition candidates, including Mr. Cissé, challenged the result of the first round of July 29. They appealed to the Constitutional Court. The results are expected in 4 or 5 days after the closure of the vote on Sunday night.
The Palestinian government calls for lifting the Israeli air quarters in the Gaza Strip. More in this video.
The Palestinian government has called on international community to pressure Israel to lift the siege in Gaza Strip, which has been going for almost a decade. The authorities also called for national reunification by carrying out all the steps of the agreement negotiated by Egypt, said the government spokesperson Yusuf al-Mahmoud in a press release. The only way out of the current internal crisis is to end the division, said Mahmoud, referring to Hamas' responsibility for refusing to achieve reconciliation. The statement come 1 day after an association of Palestinian businessmen said more than 95% of Gaza's factory had stopped production due to an Israeli restrictions imposed more than a month on the entry of raw materials into the coastal enclave.
NASA has successfully launched the Parker Solar Probe. More in this video.
NASA's new probe, the Parker Solar Probe, has successfully taken off for an unprecedented journey that should bring it closer to the Sun and its mysteries. The Parker Solar Probe, the first human attempt to cross the Sun, was successfully launched by NASA on Sunday, August 12, from Cape Canaveral, Florida. The U.S. Space Agency originally planned to launch the spacecraft on Saturday, but a problem of gaseous helium pressures, which appeared a few minutes before takeoff, had forced NASA to postpone the operation.
And that's all for this news. Thank you for joining us on RTD, and have a good night.